Okay, I can't tell. For the mayoral forum, sponsored by Bridge Leader and Loudoun Now, the format will be 3 minutes each for the mayoral candidates to have an introduction. We'll then have questions. I've got lots of questions that have been given to me by the audience members. They each have 2 minutes to answer a question. You can't hear in the back? No. They have 2 minutes to answer a question. If it gets into a real back and forth, it can be a rebuttal of up to a minute. So with that, there was a coin toss that gets to go first. So Chris Thompson will lead off with his 3-minute opening statement.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I don't speak real loud, so you have to depend on the microphone. All right, my friend.
Okay, good enough.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Chris Thompson, candidate for mayor. I've never held a political office. I'm seeking the office of mayor out of a sense of duty to the residents of Purcellville. Purcellville is my home. Purcellville has always been my home. So why am I running? I'm running because I believe it is important to have choices. This particular year is tough for anyone to step forward because of the decisions that the mayor and the town council have made during the last 2 years have created a climate of distrust and lack of transparency in the eyes of the community. I'm running because I'm embarrassed, not only for the public perception of Purcellville in the local and national news, but because if you want to see change, you have to make that change. I understand the fact that a mayor and council must give so much of their personal lives to be good stewards for the well-being of our community. And I do applaud our mayor and council for their involvement. I'm running because I think I have something special to offer. My historical knowledge of the town and its past provide a great reference point for my decision-making. And I get tired of hearing that we inherited this problem and we have to deal with it. It is part of the past and is really only a point of reference to making decisions. I'm running because I realize that the collective number of years that the present town council has lived in the town was only 8 to 9 years, totaling about the same number of years that I've been here. No representation was on the council for residents who had lived here longer. Again, only a reference point, as the current mayor and council do consider the needs of all citizens of Purcellville, no matter how long you've lived here. I'm running because I want to see respect returned to the town council, and every member should be able to express their own beliefs and vote in a way that makes sense to them and not be pressured to show unanimous solidarity for any particular issue or platform. I'm running because I feel I can bring a unique skill set that I've honed through my personal life, and those are practical thinker, problem solver, and peacemaker. Maybe this comes from being a middle child. Who knows? My work involves finding solutions that fit the needs of all parties. One added point that I'd like to make: people ask, what do you mean by your stance on growth when you say you're not for it or against it? The fact is, maybe I've lived here too long. Maybe it's my cynicism. But I've seen so many councils come and go. They have taken growth stances both for and against it. The topic is nothing new. If I had my way in 1968, we would not have grown from the 500 people who lived here when I was a kid. I would certainly everyone must enjoy what I enjoy, right? Over the many years, I've listened to our newest citizens become the most vocal about growth, wanting to close the gates behind them. So it is so easy to say you want no growth. Does your no growth stance apply to all growth that will be presented to you? Do you close your ears and minds to every proposal? Or does another 24 houses pop up here and there and you hope no one notices? No growth is easy to say, but actually harder to defend because it forces you to govern in a box, and in that box you better be prepared to absorb increased taxes and be ready to pay higher utility rates. Pro-growth has its own set of obvious problems. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming. This is representation of democracy. Please give your hands, yourself a hand of applause. Okay, so my name is Kwasi Fraser. I'm your current mayor. 4 years ago, the desire to serve all of Purcellville became a passion, and now it's determination. Over the past 4 years, we have lowered your debt. I did inherit $60 million in debt. As of June, it will be $55 million. And recently, we did a debt restructuring where we saved the town of Purcellville in debt payment $12.5 million. So we as a council, and with your full representation, has been able to do a lot. Tonight, you will hear from my worthy opponent, his visions, his dreams, and maybe a poem or two. But you'll hear from me specific, actionable goals, and also a reflection of the accomplishments that we have made as a council for the town of Purcellville. I should have started my speech, my brief speech, with my wife will be here shortly, but the foremost things that is important to me is that I'm a father, I'm a husband, and I'm a citizen. Because as a citizen, I made that obligation to serve you great people of the town of Purcellville. And with that servant leadership and mentality and spirit, I would ask for your vote on May the 1st. I look forward to a great night of debating on the issues, so it'll be clear to you, crystal clear, where I stand on the issues and contrast it with my worthy opponent. Thank you all for coming, and enjoy a great night of debate.
This first question for the candidates, Chris, I guess we'll go first. If elected, what 3 steps would you take to put our town on a firmer financial footing?
What 3 steps? The steps I would take would be to try to control costs, to try to try to make Purcellville better stewards of their town, to sorry, but then I just don't have a great answer for you.
Yeah, so 3 steps. We need to get this operational audit done. And folks, you would say, what does operational audit has to do with financial stability and prosperity? The operational audit will take a deep dive into how we run the town operations. And the town operations include revenue assurance. It includes the tax and keep, the way we bill. All of these, our citizens need to know that they have a functional town, a town that is fully functional. With this operational audit that I've asked for the past 4 years, we have the impetus to get that done now. That would establish a baseline where we can then optimize the way that we serve you as a people of Purcellville. Second step would be continue on our process of reducing the debt. Focus on reducing that debt. I know we took it from 60 million to 55 million. Let's find ways to take it even lower. Because once we lower our debt, that means more money in your pocket that you don't have to take out to make that payment. And finally, would be my vision of asset monetization. And when I say asset monetization, this town of Purcellville owns $130 million worth of assets. People will question if that's an asset, because an asset is something that you gain value and revenue from. We'll continue with that strategy to see how we could further monetize our assets. Those are the 3. Thank you.
Okay, this would be for Mayor. How do you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process in our town?
Checkpoints are important. As mayor, I started on a quarterly basis to have what we call a stage-side chat. That's why I'm very comfortable in these seats. I will be here and the citizens will be around. And I'll engage them in heart-to-heart conversation. It's no longer the mayor on a dais and looking down on the citizen. We sit around this stage and they ask questions. I will continue with that. In addition, we started a program called Pulco, and it's an online program application that citizens can go in and take survey questions. So feedback can be driven back to the town and also to council. So it's that on and on engagement. We need checkpoints wherever the people are. If we go to a sporting event, I want to make sure that I introduce myself and they can ask any questions. It's no longer, and my wife would admit this, I can no longer go into Giant for a 5-minute stay. It's always a question will lead to another question. But I love that. That's what energizes me as a mayor. Thank you.
I actually believe that going around to the businesses and talking to citizens is the best way to get public involvement. I think you see them in their own environment. I think you see them with what they have on their minds and what questions and concerns that they would have that are directly concerning their lives and their businesses. The citizens of Purcellville deserve a town council that listens to its citizens, and it also it's something that's important to listen to and to be able to come back and explain to your fellow town council members.
Okay, the next, I have multiple questions, multiple cards with pretty much the same question. So they seem to be the hot ticket items of right now. First one was, do you think the town council should spend money on legal costs to investigate corruption in the town staff?
Well, I think you almost have to spend money to investigate corruption in the town staff. If you didn't, you wouldn't be doing the job of oversight of the town manager and his staff. The amount of money you spend, though, gets to be a point of contention. I don't know where you stop when you think about spending money on investigations. Sometimes the investigations you should do yourselves. You should certainly, without the involvement of cost of having the investigations done by external forces, you should be able to cut the cost by being able to conduct them yourselves.
Yeah, so when we have risk events in our lives or in businesses, you would hope that we had the foresight to budget for those risk events. But sometimes these things do not happen that way. Last year, we had such a risk event in Purcellville. I know some members of the old council would say the only time you'll call an emergency meeting years ago was if the water tower was falling, right? But that was years ago. We are in an information age, and if you have emails, scandalous emails going into your inbox, you call an emergency meeting. Because that's the time. This is the Google age. Back then, it was going to be the water tower, but now it's electronic, right? So when that event occurred in the town of Purcellville, and that was just a subset of it, I can't say too much about it. This town council took immediate steps to understand exactly what was the truth. And we did not believe we had the core competency internal in Purcellville, as my opponent suggests, to do our own investigation. So we hired the best firm to conduct the investigation, multiple investigations. Right, as it stands, that fee is $211,000 based on the last reporting. Right, we need to update that report, but we cannot tell what exactly the cost would be, but we hope that we budget for it. I'm not going to guarantee that risk events are not realized in the future, but we'll learn from this. We'll have solutions that are actionable that will prevent this from happening again.
Okay, the other one, I think there are 6 or 7 cards with this general question, and this would be for the mayor first. Do you have any personal relationships with any landowners, such as the Warners or Tools, who are currently requesting annexation and or rezoning of property into the town? If so, do you plan to recuse yourself from voting?
Okay. I have no relationship with any landowners within Virginia. If you had asked me in Florida, yes, but not in Virginia. And if I did, of course, I will recuse myself from voting. But for the record, I have no relationship, personal relationship with any landowners.
Well, the question asked me about the Warner annexation. And I'm not pro-growth or anti-growth, but what happens with the Warner family is that we've been friends since we were 5 years old. I can't help that. My mother was a second grade school teacher, and his mother was a school secretary. We've known each other for a long time. Years later, when his parents passed away, the family inherited the farm. Scott moved in next door, and we have we've known each other. We've had parties together, but because I have a relationship with him doesn't mean that I have any involvement at all with the family farm. I've never asked him to see the plans for the community. I've never seen the designs that they've made to increase the number of homes and businesses that want to go out there. I think it's their personal business. I mean, I wouldn't ask any of you to show me your checkbook or your medical records. I think it's important to know that the Warners have a desire to be in the town because they think that they can offer something special to the town. I think they want to offer ball fields and some businesses out there that could benefit the tax base of Purcellville. But other than that, I have no personal involvement with the Warner family other than for neighbors and close friends.
This would be for Chris, I guess, starts. What's more important for our town right now? Building development or rehabbing and better utilizing existing storefronts and property?
What's better for the town? Sorry.
What's more important for our town right now?
Rehab or?
Building development or rehab of existing?
Well, I think they're both equally important. I think building and rehab is important, especially like on 21st Street, where some of those buildings that have been there for as long as I've been here have no real continuity with the rest of 21st Street. I think you can build something that actually fits the model there, that is very attractive. I also think rehabbing some of the storefronts and having some of these businesses become more attractive to outside constituents who want to come in and be part of Purcellville. I think they add to our tax base. I think that the number of businesses we have should grow. I think they offset our personal property tax bills, and I think it's a good.
So this goes back to we have assets of over $130 million owned by the town. I think we need to, I believe that we need to look at our existing assets and see what we can monetize from that, what value we can obtain from that. So I would put development on the far left. Wait for development. I'm the slow growth candidate here. I'm not on the fence about that, and I'll make it certain to you all that I'm for slow growth. Look at what we currently have, see how we could optimize it, see how we can generate more revenue from it before we start looking at bringing annexations in and so on and so forth. But as we look at redevelopment in the town of Purcellville, let us build something that will be worthy of restoration 50 or 60 years from now. Let us not build Lego blocks. I was on the campus of Christopher Newport, and the buildings, they are unapologetic about architectural style and grace. And that's what we need in the town of Purcellville. We keep saying that we focus on old-time charm and classic look and mystique. Let us get architectures that will come in and build things that are worthy of restoration 50 years. I give the example of Christopher Newport because you look at these buildings and you would think they were built probably in the 1800s, some 1920. But when I asked the question of the tour guide, he said, we'll build like in 10 years. So if we can hold developers accountable, they can build things that we will love and appreciate and respect in Purcellville. Thank you.
This question comes in, it's a little bit out of the box. I think it's new news. Is the council, the mayor of the council, aware that the agreement with Play to Win increased the cost for Upper Loudoun youth football from $6,500 a year to over $20,000? Are you aware that until that the Upper Loudoun Youth Football League will not play at Fireman's Field in what should be their 50th year?
Yeah, so 50 years, my son played there. I moved chains on Fireman's Field for Upper Loudoun Football League. He was Seahawk and he was a player on Gators, right? And I was made aware of that recently because, again, as a legislative body, there's a thin line that we are not allowed to cross from a management perspective. So we did hire a management firm to do all of the management and the negotiations with Upper Loudoun Football League and also the Greater Loudoun Bay Group. So I was made aware of this about a week ago, and that's an enormous increase, right? Regardless, and I spoke to some members of the organization, and they said, well, Upper Loudoun Football League has over $500,000 in the bank. I'm like, no, we promised that they will be able to play at Fireman's Field. Let's see how we can accommodate that. And I called up one of the principals of the partnership, and I'm in negotiations with that person to see if we can go back to Upper Loudoun Football League to see what can be done. Because that 12,000 you said to 20, or was it
6,500 to 20.
6,500 to 20. Maybe there's something in the middle. We don't want them to have free lunch because that would be at the taxpayer's expense. But bring them back to the table and let's understand what would be a reasonable rate. And that's my position.
But look at why the cost went up from $6,500 to $20,000. The county provided those services. The county had had Fireman's Field under their watch, and what they did was they provided county dollars to maintain the fields. Right now, what you have to do is you have to absorb those costs as a town yourself. Purcellville doesn't have a lawn service or a way to keep the costs down. What people really need to understand is that the cost of doing those businesses or the cost to run those programs needs to incorporate the cost of what it takes to put the services on. It's a shame, though, with Fireman's Field, because Fireman's Field was built with volunteers from the community. The volunteers spent countless number of years. Sorry. Go ahead.
Some people in our community say that we have traffic problems. What do you think? Are there any solutions?
People don't like to hear that you should do a study on traffic. Yeah, we have traffic problems. And comes from growth. The traffic is only going to continue to become a worse problem until you find solutions. But those solutions just bring more traffic. They debated on one last night, and there's no real good solution. The solution you had in place took care of the problem for one side of the story, but not the other. Traffic is something you're going to have to deal with when you become as large as we are. It's something that's it's there, and it's part of what you have to do to get through the town.
And so we have a commitment in our comprehensive plan to have a comprehensive traffic study. Traffic is part of our infrastructure, and one of the initiatives that would significantly reduce traffic on Main Street and also on Hearst is that 690 and 7 interchange. The last account is by 2023, we'll start to break ground. I know folks can't wait that long, but that's what it is. And myself as mayor and council, and the new council coming in, we just need to go to our local, state, federal legislators and try to see how we can accelerate that initiative. I bring that initiative up because right now the quality of service on Hearst is a D and a F, and an F depending on time of day. With the 690 and 70 interchange, it will drastically reduce that, and it'll be B and A. So that is something that we need to accelerate. We look for your support, knocking on doors or sending letters to your local legislators so we could make that happen. In addition to that, we are looking at the University of Maryland. They contacted me about a month ago, and they have this unique way of doing traffic studies using GPS. So based on Google Maps and so on, they're able to run traffic study. I submitted to them several of our artilleries, our stores that, or streets and roads that might be a good pilot for that test. Okay? And so that is very important to us. It's in the comprehensive plan, and we'll get it done.
This would be for the mayor. What are you, as the mayor, going to do to reduce my water rate?
Okay. Good question. So, reduction of water rate. That's my number 4. You asked for 3. That's my number 4. There's a lot to be done on that. So we have 500,000 gallons of water per day leaves our wastewater treatment plant. And I put the argument to wastewater treatment plant because we invested over $30 million, and that's why your water rates are that high. Because we bought the Cadillac of a wastewater treatment plant, and it's 50% underutilized. But today, that is still an asset. So instead of depending on the ratepayers, let's find unique, innovative ways to, again, obtain money from that. Going back to my point, 500,000 gallons of wastewater that is treated, not drinkable, but can come in contact with human skin, leaves the town of Purcellville border every day, 500,000 gallons. Let's find unique ways, go to university, go to businesses, and see how we can use some of that water and get economic value from it. Last week, Friday, the owner of Purcellville Auto Wash called me up, and he wanted to take a sample of that so he can use it for finishing cars. Today they use a lot of recycling, but now that could be a potential user for our wastewater. So getting back to your question, let's find unique and innovative and creative ways to extract value from that wastewater treatment plant. It's $50 million. I'm against looking at it that we'll have to build to get out of it. Let's be innovative. We're in the 21st century, folks. All right?
I actually believe that you can't reduce the water rates. I think the costs that you're going to incur for upgrades in the system are going to drive the prices higher. If you look at the report that Davenport created for the town council that was just presented, It actually shows a 2% increase in the cost of providing water for this current year. But after this year, don't be fooled. It's a 7% increase just to cover costs. And 7% every year. Those costs are going to continue to drive the price of water up.
Kind of a holistic question. What do you see as the town's greatest challenge? And how can your plan help overcome that?
Well, I think the greatest challenge to Purcellville is what you see at Fireman's Field. I think you've got some assets in the town that bring people to the community. Purcellville's is very attractive. It's got a lot of pressure on it to grow, and more citizens want to come to Purcellville to live and work and play. It's difficult to say what you can do to mitigate the problem, but I think what you have to do is you have to be concerned with the I'm sorry. I actually do better when I'm in a crowd by myself.
Okay, so I think our greatest challenge is reduction of our debt, and that goes back to the question about wastewater treatment. I noticed that Mr. Thompson did not give a solution. He just indicated that the rates would just keep on going. But again, my solution is a mixture of creativity, innovation, and what we're doing right now, not going all the way to development. So again, the greatest challenge in Purcellville is that debt reduction, and that flows right into the lowering the rates on our citizens for water and sewer. And I look forward to working with the community, working with the business community to see how we can get potential additional users to use our wastewater. One additional user, if I may, is in the field of agriculture. And in that field of agriculture, remember I said that water can touch human skin and so on. It can also be used for irrigation and dust management. So again, that's the solution I propose, and that's our major issue.
I know you touched on this in your opening remarks, but maybe you can go a little deeper. Do you think that your political and financial experience and/or education makes you more qualified than your opponent to be mayor?
I'm not a politician. Shea Randall reminded me that I'm not a politician. but I'm a solution provider. Right out of college, I built the first wireless long-distance network. So if you folks have an AT&T phone, you probably are routing through the 4 E-switches that I direct connected to right out of college. That was an experience going across the country, because at that time AT&T purchased McCaw Cellular, named way back 1996, and while we were building a nationwide network, we had the bad guys trying to clone the phones. So I got into risk management. That's why this situation with what we call the scandal, that's risk management, right? It's a risk event that we did not plan for. We did not have the processes in place to do some stopgap measures, but we were able to understand that we identify it and find ways to resolve it. So getting back to your question, I think I'm uniquely qualified because I have an MBA in finance. I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt. I've been trying to introduce principles for optimization organization efficiencies within Purcellville for the past 4 years, and we're getting there. Today we received a list of key issues and risk, operational risk from our outgoing manager. I intend to socialize that list with the community so you folks can see when I say we have deep systemic issues, we do have deep systemic issues, but we as a council and as a community, we can fix those by having the right people qualified working for your interest.
Can I ask the question one more time?
Sure. Do you think, what do you think in your political and or financial experience or and or education makes you more qualified than your opponent to be mayor?
I think my financial or my education allows me to like I say, it's difficult for me because when I sit up here, I have to think about the question and I have to formulate an answer, but I'm not real good at just responding to something that is new to me. But I do think my financial experience does set me as qualified to. Sorry. Go ahead.
This would be for you, Chris.
Okay.
Would you vote to restore the 6-story height limit in the downtown district? We have multiple questions on that.
6 stories is out of place down 21st Street. 2 stories or 2 stories and a half would fit the present scheme. It more closely models Magnolias and the little 5 office business unit that's to the right of that. I think, though, that 21st Street has an opportunity to become a hub for the town. I think there's a lot of people who could enjoy the condominiums and apartments that you would put in there. I don't think that the amount of the height is really concerned, except for the fact that when you're that tall, you kind of dwarf everything. It kind of looks like a high-rise community.
I would not. And there's this analogy I always use, not an analogy, it's a statement. My favorite building in all of the world is a Chrysler building in New York. I like it in pictures, I like it in movies, right? To put a Chrysler building in Purcellville, although it's not 6 stories, it will become my most hated building. So everything in its place, everything. We do not need to increase the height, and I would not as mayor. Okay. And again, that is the small town feel that you folks asked for, and that's a small town feel we need to deliver to you.
This would be for the mayor. If you could change one thing about our zoning code, what would it be and why?
One thing about our zoning code. We did change the duplex law because we had some unique ways of making the duplex not look like a duplex, right? And we took steps to change that. With the zoning code, to be honest with you right now, I can't see anything I will change at this moment. But, you know, after a comprehensive plan is completed, you need to go and look at all of those zoning codes. So not just the mayor is going to say, I need to change X, Y, and Z. All of you folks will be engaged in changing that. So to answer your question in a roundabout way is based on the citizens' input. Whatever they want us to change, I'll make sure that they have the support on council to change it.
I also don't have a great answer to the question, and I do like the thought that you've got duplexes that look like single-family homes. They touch with foundations underground and make them actually a duplex. Some of the zoning laws that you considered changing are maybe in the historic district. The fact that the infrastructure in the center of that portion of the town has to fit the model of what's presently there, and it can be changed to incorporate a better mix of offices and buildings that fit what you need to do.
This would be for Chris. Where are your favorite places to spend time in our town?
Well, there's only one, it's Fireman's Field. I spent many years trying to rebuild Fireman's Field. When the idea came up by Jeff Brown, we decided to take the initiative to rebuild the infrastructure and to make that a place where people would want to go and be part of something. It was very disconcerting when I saw in the newspaper of January 8th the picture that showed Fireman's Field, it showed the town hall with just a few members. And what it showed was what a community does when they don't work together. But Fireman's Field was unique in its 1998 press release to the Post when it showed a picture of 5,000 people at Fireman's Field. It was taken from center field. And what it showed is what you can do as a community when all the citizens work together. Some of those events we had at Fireman's Field went on for days, and they attracted people from all of Western Loudoun. Purcellville isn't just about Purcellville. It's about being the centerpiece in Western Loudoun. People that live around the town consider themselves as residents of Purcellville. I mean, Purcellville has a unique place. But my absolute favorite place is absolutely sitting behind the home plate, Fireman's Field.
My favorite place, and it became my favorite place about 2 years ago, is the Chapman-DeMary Trail. It's actually a river walk in small town Purcellville. Nobody knows about it, and the more people that know about it, I guess it would not be my favorite place. But if you folks have an opportunity, go take a walk. I know it's not the river, but it's the closest thing we have in Purcellville to something like that. And it's a long trail. You just walk through. Be careful with the trees. We even have some gigantic trees up there too. So take pictures, and it's a good walk. That's my favorite place in Purcellville. You know where it is? Okay. So we can give you information.
Okay. If I vote for you, will you promise that the buck stops here?
Yeah, always. With this investigation, the scandal as it's called, actually I have a friend that did social media analytics, right? And with social media analytics, takes keywords, put them into an engine, and come back and tell me the sentiment. Purcellville is still positive. So there is an envelope or a pocket of folks that see Purcellville as this incident that happened, which is big and major, right? But it's not defined in Purcellville. So when you say the buck stop here, I wrote a letter to everyone that said, we are taking ownership of this. We didn't cause this, but we are taking ownership of it. We brought in the right experts to deal with it, and now the experts have provided their feedback. Let's learn from it and make Purcellville a better community. And again, the buck stops with me and the council because you folks hired us to be good fiscal stewards, and that's what we are committed to doing.
Well, I think the buck stops here because the moment you actually take the office of mayor, you inherit all the problems that are in place that you will be working on the next couple of years. I think everything that you say and do is part of what you make of the community. I personally believe that Purcellville is looking to
finishing time here. There's time for 2 more questions, and then we'll go to the closing statement.
That's actually a blessing.
The first one is, do you think our Main Street in downtown is healthy and successful?
Well, if you look at the amount of traffic it is, a lot of the businesses depend on the amount of foot traffic to come into their stores. It's hard to get a gauge on whether it's healthy or not. You see a lot of stores that are not occupied. You see a lot of vacancies. You see a lot of businesses come and go. You actually have to get in there and find what it takes to make businesses want to stay. It's not always for profit, but that's what it is.
I think with over 43 new businesses under our current administration for 2017, we are a vibrant business community. Going back to your question, whether Main Street is, you said?
Do you think Main Street and downtown is healthy and successful?
Yeah. So I think the way I'll answer that question is that I think there's a lot more improvement to be made. I believe it was last year, I sat with Lothar, the butcher guy that went to the Olympics, and we were sitting out at his store and we were looking out Main Street. And he said, in his German accent, Mr. Mayor, what you can do about these power lines? And he saw the power lines as working with Dominion and putting it on the ground so you could beautify the place. And I never thought of that. So we need to sit with the business community, understand what their ideas are to make that place more vibrant. For now, it is successful because we are getting significant revenue. Our meals tax alone is like 1.9 million. That is approaching our real estate tax. So they are contributing to us, but there are other ways that they could also contribute. And the way we get that is by sitting, listening, and taking action.
One last question. If you received $1 million grant for use for the town in any way you wanted, what would you do with it and why?
Is that me or?
It's your...
Okay. Aberdeen property, we paid $2.5 million for that property 8+ years ago. The goal was to use the wells, connect them, and so we could have additional water source. 8 years passed, no wells are connected. That $2.8 million is gone, but we have this 189 acres. $1 million, invest in the equine industry, put something there that the people of Purcellville will love, and the people in Western Loudoun will also love, and let's take 800,000 of that, right? And do something that will be good for the Aberdeen property, where we could monetize that asset and make it a vibrant asset. The other 200,000 will give you all a tax break.
Well, I think you take the entire $1 million and you apply it toward debt, and I think reducing the debt would actually give you that same tax break.
Okay, that ends the question period. Now we'll go to closing statements. So, Mayor, you start.
Okay. Again, folks, thank you all. Mr. Thompson, thank you for stepping up. It is a courageous venture. So for the past 4 years, I thank my wife, she's in the crowd, thank the family for being with me. I know this was a crazy idea that started 4 years ago. Still a crazy idea. But right now as I stand before you, I'm thinking vacation come June, right? But we have an election to win. I ask for your vote. I hope I was able to convey to you my platform that is built on the goals and accomplishments of the past and the realization of those goals, and also the goals for the future. We have, with 2 different councils that I've served on, we were able to reduce your debt. I know your water fees are still high, but we're looking at creative and innovative ways to lower that water fee and not depend on massive annexation and growth. My principle, again, is slow growth. Keep Purcellville as this unique town in the United States and not everywhere USA. And for that, I thank you for the last 4 years. Your good comments and your not so good comments, it kept me going. And I ask again for your vote on May the 1st. Thank you all.
Yay.
If you were to receive $1 million grant for use for the town,
Closing comments?
yeah, the closing, excuse me.
This is all new to me. You know, I've never sat in front of a group and had a debate. The reason I'm running for mayor is because I think we do need a different choice. I think that the citizens of Purcellville are tired of the year-long investigations. I think they're tired of what happens to the employees of Purcellville who are put in a position where they're disrespected and they're not taken care of in the way that you would run people in your own business. I also want your vote on May 1st. But because I think I actually have something different to say that is hard for me to say in front of a large group or audience, which is probably detrimental to the fact that when you're on the town council, you're going to be in this situation. But you know, I do intend to work for you and represent you and do the best job that we can in the next 2 years. Thank you.
So that ends the mayoral forum. We'll have city council members up here shortly. I'll take a 2-minute break in between, and I put out a call for any additional questions you have for the city council. An hour with the town council candidates. Again, I'm Jim Miller, moderator. So the format will be 2 minutes for opening statement, 2 minutes for a close, but 1 minute to answer each question. So with that, I'll pass it.
Okay, thank you. Steve Warfield, obviously running for town council. Running because I do love the town of Purcellville. I have 2 daughters that graduated from Banneker, then graduated from Blue Ridge. They're currently freshmen at Mountain Valley. I've lived in the 20132 zip code since 2001. Lived in the actual town of Purcellville about 4.5 years. I first started thinking about running when it looked like there might not even be enough candidates to, warrant a vote. I'm glad we do have 4. I think all 4 of us are qualified. I think that's good. Sign of democracy. I think the fact that everybody's here is a good sign of democracy. I would like to see Purcellville stay with its small town feel. I am concerned we do have a couple speed bumps on the road ahead that's been already talked about. I'm sure we'll talk about it further. Now my platform really surrounds 3 T's, what I call our turmoil, our taxes, and our traffic. And I'm sure over the next hour we'll have plenty of discussion about that. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Ted Greenlee. I am currently a member of the town council. I was appointed to the council on 14 November when council member Grimm stepped down. First of all, I would like to thank the Blue Ridge leader for hosting this event tonight. It's really great to get out because when you start knocking on doors, people think you're selling something. They will not open. So I've got my son and my wife who are going out with me as well. So that helps. So there's a key, but don't use that. So there you go. So I've been a member or been a resident of Purcellville for about 9 years now. Prior to that, I was in the military. So I grew up in a military family. I joined the Army after that. And then I moved around. After I got out of the military, I joined the Foreign Service. So I've lived overseas quite a bit. And quite frankly, I'm tired of moving around. So I found Purcellville. When my wife came back, she flew back from England, bought a house here. I didn't even know what Purcellville was, and here I sit. One of the reasons that I wanted to do come to Purcellville, I was attracted to the small town feel. I believe in where this town's going. At this time, at this stage of my life, I'm getting close to retirement. I'm a full a federal employee who's working full time. I came out of Washington D.C., came right here. When I look at what this town's going, what we're offering, I truly believe in it. My son attends the middle school here. He's getting ready to start the middle school. Plays Little League baseball. My wife is a small business owner. So when you tie all that together, and then you just get that small town feel, this is a pretty cool place to be, and that's why I'm running.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Joel Grewe. I live here in town, obviously. You can't run for it if you don't, but I've been here for about a decade. I have 3 little boys. I'm married here. I run a nonprofit here in town. It's called Gen J, Generation Joshua. It actually teaches civics, government, and ethics to high school students, and we work both here in Loudoun County, but also internationally at this point, but all around the nation. It also means that I do budgets and HR and forecasting and that sort of thing. This is, in a sense, a town is kind of like a nonprofit. We're not supposed to spend more than we make, and we're not out to necessarily make a profit per se, but we're out to manage our stuff well. But as far as why I'm running, the simple part is this. It's traffic. Steve mentioned it, you've heard it, we'll talk about it some more, I'm sure. We have a rush hour and we shouldn't, really, not really. And there are solutions to be had for that. It's taxes. If you live in the town here, you pay taxes twice. Once the town, once the county. Even if you elect me to council, I can't change that. That's a state thing. But we can make sure that the money that goes out here comes back to this town and serves you well. And that's something that we can make a priority. And lastly, and this is an issue, it's a question of oversight. How our town manages its personnel and our problems and our challenges in front of us, what good oversight looks like, what makes the town a trustworthy thing, and something where you can say, yeah, they said it, it's true, and I can bank on that. That's an important thing, and recently it's taken something of a hit, and I think we can do a better job in restoring that. That's me. I would love to sit down and talk with you after. Thank you so much.
Hey, how many of you guys watched Mark Zuckerberg today? Yeah, because I'm feeling like a rocket scientist because I'm not on Facebook. I am on LinkedIn, and believe it or not, yeah, here's $1. Give me the extra 30 seconds, okay? I am on LinkedIn, and I got 700, apparently I got 700 friends on LinkedIn, and absolutely 0 of those friends helped me get 125 signatures for my petition to get on the ballot. During the course of doing that, I learned 2 things. One is that the citizens of Purcellville tend to ask you really tough questions if they don't know you. One question they ask you is, who are you? That's pretty tough. And then the second question is what do you stand for? And I found that if you can kind of distill that down to about a 60-second soundbite, you might get to the bonus round, which is how and why. But my name is Tip, and I'm running for town council. I've got 35 years of proven leadership experience. I'm a retired colonel in the Air Force. I am a current federal executive with the Federal Aviation Administration. I led a town twice the size of Purcellville. Actually, in the military, we call it an air base. Okay, I've got a master's from the University of Pennsylvania in public administration, and I've also got a master's in strategy from the United States Army War College. Did I say strategery? I almost did. At any rate, I've got an undergrad degree in economics from the Virginia Military Institute, and my platform is trying to make Purcellville stronger. Okay, and by making Purcellville stronger, what I want to accomplish is I want to preserve and protect our place in Western Loudoun County as a sustainable small town. Am I going to get my $1 back? All right. So we'll talk about the bonus round in a couple of minutes. All right? Thank you. Sure. Come on.
Okay, thank you all for that. We'll start the question period now. The question on the table, if you need me to reread it, I will. How do you plan to involve the residents in the decision-making process in our town?
I think the best way is to encourage more people to show up to planning commission town meetings. I know I've been to quite a few of the town meetings lately. I've been to budget meetings. So it was a budget meeting where they proposed a 2% increase in our tax rate as a contingency plan. I believe there was 3 or 4 people in the room besides us candidates. So I would encourage more participation, but also I think just walking around, talking to people, talking to business owners, talking to people you run into in the grocery store, talking to my kids' friends, my kids' parents' friends, my kids' parents, friends of my kids' parents, whatever. It's a small enough town that we can, converse and be civil about it. And I think the town council can have disagreements among themselves, and that's healthy. But once a decision is made, move on to the next issue and proceed.
So that's something I'm actually doing right now is I like to get out and talk to people. I'm always out walking around. I love to get on these trails. Mayor, where are you at? I know where the Chapman Mayor Trail is. I go out there quite a bit. So when I'm getting out there, I talk. I do something called geocaching. I'm walking around the town. I get out there, Little League Baseball I'm involved with, Travel League Baseball I'm involved with my church. What the mayor had said earlier, I agree with. When you walk around, and I'm not super well known around town, but people know I'm on the council, so they're like, hey, I got a quick question for you, Ted. If you can give it to me in 30 seconds or less. You're going out there, you get a lot of emails, phone calls, and all that stuff. I've been out to businesses. I've talked to business owners who flat out at first didn't want to talk to me, but they signed my petition. It's one of those things when you get out and you're talking to people, you've got to be genuine. You've got to get out there and engage, and you have to listen. Communicate. That is a key. Thank you.
All right, it's a good question. I think the best answer is twofold. The first one is to make sure you're accessible. If you are a servant of the town, because that's really what the council is, that means you need to be someone that the town as a whole can get a hold of. It means that you put your cell phone on your webpage and people can get a hold of you that way. It means you hand it out to people to call and text. If you don't mind, it's on my webpage. You're welcome to have it. It means that you're going to the HOA meetings and you're attending the local events, not just making them come to town hall, because some people, they'll never do that. It means sometimes you have to go to them. Other times it means you make sure that those events you're doing at town hall are well publicized and people know when they are regularly scheduled and easy to access. It can be done, and it can be done well. It just takes some careful thought. You never would use this, right?
No, I don't want to. Hey, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the country club cut-through problem that's been in the paper lately. But hey, God blessed us with 2 of these and 1 of these. So last time I checked, we need to do a little bit better job with the listening part. I will tell you, the country club community and the Catoctin Meadows community, they've actually told us the answer. They've actually told us the questions we should be looking at. And we have done collectively a very poor job of listening to them. Okay? The fact of the matter is everybody in Purcellville is engaged. We just tend to talk over each other. Be it through social media or inattention. I mean, I'm watching the room during the 2 mayors' debates, and a fair number of us had out our cell phones when we were kind of busy doing this. Listening is actually kind of putting this away and using this and shutting this down. And I think by and large the community does that.
Okay, a different question. We have some new questions up here. Please state your position on the Northern Collector Road.
I can start everyone.
Hey, there you go.
I know that Northern Collector Road has been on the county and the town plans for, I believe, 25 to 30 years as part of planning. Depending on what happens with 690, it may actually be something we may need to look at. I think if 690 happens and it happens within a reasonable time frame, probably not something we need. I know the current council sent a letter to, I believe, the county saying that they would like it taken off. And the quote I saw in the paper, they said they would like it taken off because of the Wrights Farm people who are not town residents. So I would not want to take it off the long-term planning, but I think if 690 happens, we won't need it. And I would also encourage everybody, there is a 690 public hearing on April 16th at Wood Creek.
I'd have to agree with that. Northern Collector Road, if the 690 interchange goes in, it may not be needed, but right now you can't really tell that without getting into the details and going back and see what that impact would be. And that's part of the, if you look at the overall planning, this is not something that's just been going on there for a short time. The Collector Road, I heard about a Collector Road when I was overseas. So it's out there, and again, when you're looking at it, it's something on there right now. I'm not sure it's really needed, but again, you have to get in there and you have to look. That 690 interchange, if it gets done, before it even gets finished, we're going to grow. We're going to grow. So to make a decision right now and say yay, nay, where I'm leaning towards, though, it would be maybe we don't need it, but it would require a little more investigation to make a firm decision on that.
All right. The Northern Collector Road has been a topic of some discussion for doors I've knocked and people I've talked to. But I think the answer is stepped. The first thing, if you want to address traffic, is that 690 interchange. That needs to happen. It needs to happen sooner rather than later. When that's done, then you see the impact of it. That might mean that you need to sit there and we might need to update the traffic study to see whether that is still needed. That would be a reasonable course of action, considering that was studied quite some time ago, and they've actually changed the rules in the county as far as what sort of companies can actually do those sorts of studies. It probably shouldn't be paid for by the people that are putting in the road. That's not okay. It also means that we need to be careful. I know there's some historic properties up there as well, and that's not something we want to imperil. One of the features of Purcellville is the historic nature of the town, and we don't want to put that in danger either. But we also have to be responsible to the needs of the residents, and that's a balancing act.
Okay, so I don't know if you ever played whack-a-mole at the county fair, but when you start talking about Northern Collector Road, traffic on Main Street and so on and so forth, really what you need to do is look at this from a kind of a synchronized perspective. Now, the mayor, in their discussion, basically told you that our transportation plan is woefully out of date, basically 2008 timeframe. A lot of stuff has changed. That's one of the reasons why the comprehensive plan that's being updated right now makes that the #1 priority going forward, is we need a comprehensive plan that looks at all of our transportation requirements, and we need to put it all in context. I mean, the 670 Route 7 exchange is going to cause some problems with the country club drive-through, and the Northern Collector may relieve some of that. But you've got to look at it in total, not in pieces and parts. And so I think that the Northern Collector deserves that type of examination. Thank you.
Okay, as we had with the mayoral candidates, there are multiple questions that deal with these two subjects. So first is, do you have any personal relationship with any landowners, such as the Warners or Tools, who are currently requesting annexation and or rezoning of property into the town? If so, do you plan to recuse yourself from voting?
I have no personal relationship with anybody, and I am self-financing my campaign. I'm not taking any funds from anybody.
I also have no connections whatsoever. And so you look at it, I know the individuals. I don't know them, on the street. I know who they are and all that stuff, and I know some of their plans and what they're looking to do because I am on the council, but I have absolutely no connections with them at all.
I have to echo that. I don't know either of them. The only thing that would be probably with disclosure is, since I'm on my HOA, I got an email about 2 weeks ago asking if there could be a meeting with the HOA board to talk about potential impacts of development. That meeting hasn't occurred. I don't know them on the street per se. But I won't say I have no connections, so at least if you're counting Facebook ones and lots of those.
Okay, I offer no and no, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
Okay, and then the second part to this, again, many questions surrounding this topic. Do you think the town council should be spending money on legal costs to investigate corruption in town staff?
I think it's unfortunate that they have had to spend money on outside investigations. I know we finally got some resolve that 3 of the people are back from leave. 1 has been let go, and there's still a decision pending with a further investigation on the chief of police. I believe the money we've spent over this could have been avoided. I don't believe any of it would have happened if Rob Lahr was still there. After that, I don't believe any of it would have happened had they chosen the assistant town manager, which would be the normal progression after that, rather than going with the public works director, who is the one person who has been fired. And I think the investigation has shown that he did a very shoddy investigation that got our police chief fired and then rehired and put on leave.
Okay, again, since I am on the council, I have probably a little more insight to this than most individuals. Well, first of all, we have insurance. So that comes into play too. And the other thing you must keep in mind is the town employees do not work for the mayor. They do not work for the town council. They work for the town manager. There's one individual on the staff who reports directly to us, and that's the town lawyer. When you look at that there, but when it comes down to are you going to invest the time and energy to look into this, it really depends on the scope of the investigation, what you're talking about. If you're talking about something that's, you know, can be handled administratively, okay, that's what a town manager does. If it's something else that goes above that, well, then you have to call in assistance. But keep in mind, there is a thing called insurance, and we have that. Thank you.
All right. So, if you guys haven't seen this, this is the report that is public. It's on the town website. It came up today. This is the public version of it. Is obviously a longer one, and it details the investigation on the investigation and what was found. I'm kind of a nerd. I find it interesting. You may not, but it is probably worth reading. If what this says is true, it's probably worth spending the money to figure out what we did, maybe we should have not done. That being said, one of the responsibilities of the legislative responsibility of council is oversight. That means carefully understanding the function of the town, of the divisions of the town, of the different departments, what they do, how they do it, and being appraised of what's going on. It means asking awkward questions sometimes, hopefully in advance of having to spend $400,000 plus on something like this, whatever the current total is on the website. I know it's not even up to date there. If it happens, you have to do something about it, but a more active hand in advance is a good thing.
Okay, so the number is 211,000 and counting, and I would also turn around and tell you that the insurance that we're talking about is insurance against lawsuits. So the question really is, it's an interesting question. I think there's a more compelling question, which is how do we learn from where we have been so that we don't end up there again? That, to me, is the more compelling of the two questions. I'm not sure that it's really value-added in relitigating, the wisdom of getting to where we are. We're where we're at. So the real issue at hand is let's make sure that we learn from this and avoid going there in the future. To that end, I do think an operational audit placed at the right time, okay, can actually help inoculate us from uncovering or kicking over a rock that we don't expect in the future. Thank you.
Okay. What do you see as the town's greatest challenge, and how can your plan help overcome that?
I think the town's greatest challenge is the cost of living here, and you got to combine both taxes and utility rates. Taxes have remained relatively stable. Our assessments are going to go up a little, so your taxes will go up slightly. I know this past year, the utility rates did not go up. Next year, they're scheduled to go up 2%. And I was at the same budget hearing where Davenport and Associates basically told the town council that unless they could find $500,000, and I don't know where they got that number from, the rates would actually have to go up by 9% every year for the foreseeable future, starting in 2020. So I think we do have to figure out how we lower our water bills and our tax bills. Currently, the water rates you're pay for 43% of the actual cost of delivering water to your home, and the wastewater, you pay 58% of the actual cost. Everything else has come from tap fees, and we all know we don't want to continue seeing tap fees, so we have to come to another solution.
I really hope that one of your greatest challenges is selecting one of us to be at the next on the town council. But I think when you talk about it, I live here, I pay taxes, my wife has a small business here. It's the fees. So trying to figure out how to get ahead of that, how to go out there and balance the need between the residents. Not all residents are equal. You've got folks out there who may be, single mom, single parent, or whatever, and have a bunch of kids. You have a business owner who uses a lot of utilities, waters, or whatever. So figure out how to balance that and to buy down that debt. So if you're looking at the debt, you know, a lot of this debt is what's driving some of these figures and all that. But, and again, what you were talking about is the tap fees. I agree with that. If we're going to grow. Regardless, we're going to grow. That's what the comprehensive plan is all about. It looks at it, it takes all these things into account, and I think you have to stay the course, make course corrections as needed, but you have a strategic vision and plan. That came from the citizens, and that's going to be our challenge: is staying that course and doing right by the citizens. Thank you. We're right on time.
That was good.
All right. You want the largest problem? That's this one. This is what happens to our water bill. At least if we don't figure out a way to fix it. Because fiscal year 2019 goes up by 2%. Fiscal year 2020 goes up by 9. Goes up by another 9 in 2021. And then another 9 in 2022. Up to 2024. That's a 56.9% increase. For me, that's another $161 in my water bill I pay. I don't want to do that. I don't think any of you do either. I'd say that's a pretty good-sized challenge. Now, part of that is financing and paying off the debt. That is part of it. But there's another part of it of just paying the operational costs. We have, if you really want to be a nerd, go read the town budget. It talks about water availability, water usage fees. We get about as much in water usage fees as we do in water availability. That's your tap fees. Okay? We have a $5 million budget roughly for water and for sewer, and balance out about 10. And we're getting about half of our revenue in each area. And those tap fees are one-time use. And at the moment, it does appear that we are using that to fund our normal operations, and that has to be fixed. And I'm out of time.
Okay, so you guys actually told us what the biggest challenge is in Purcellville. This is right from your comprehensive plan, which you guys helped write. You say that Purcellville's location in the fastest growing county in Virginia at the edge of Washington, D.C. metropolitan area presents both challenges and opportunities. Go figure. This issue of encroachment, do we get big, do we develop, do we stay small? That's our issue. And we need to kind of figure out a synchronized strategy that kind of allows us to kind of leverage some of those challenges and come up with a strategy that connects us with the county rather than puts us in opposition with the county. I think it's important for us to be connected to the county so that we can come up with a strategy to deal with this encroachment, because it's coming. It's here already. And we need a comprehensive strategy to deal with that. And that, to me, is our biggest single challenge. And I think it's what you've told us as well.
Okay. What do you think that in your job, political and financial experience and/or education makes you more qualified than your opponent to be mayor? I know you all touched on this in your opening remarks. Maybe you can highlight something else.
I don't think I really touched on it, but I do have a agricultural economics and business management degree from Cornell University. I went to law school. I've been a corporate executive for a number of years. I was that big bad word. I was working on development for big box retail. Did a lot of Costco's across the United States. And when I joined the Purcellville Business Association out here, they asked me the question, is Costco coming to Purcellville? I said, of course Costco's not coming to Purcellville. And it never would come to Purcellville. It would be completely inappropriate. But the good news is, I think I can see through developers when they come in with a plan. I understand traffic studies. I can decipher what maybe is the truth and what's a little bit of BS because I was on the other side. I've been in front of hostile audiences when I was trying to get Costco's approved elsewhere. So it gives me a very different perspective and an understanding of the other side.
So I would tend to believe that, again, my overall experience is, I moved around the world all the time, so I've seen different cultures, I've seen different points of views, and I've espoused those. I'm like, okay, you look at it and you think, well, I have a business management degree. I went in the federal service as an IT manager. I'm now an HR manager. So I work with divisions, everything from 4 to 5 people who worked under me to about 230. I've developed budgets. I've delivered budgets that were multi-million dollars, that were 2-year funds, 3-year funds, single-year funds. So if you look at that, I've taken that methodology and I've used all that. And you got to develop the stuff you've got to do with personnel, all these different things. And the fact that I'm on the council now, but quite honestly, I got on there on 14 November. If I didn't think I could do it, if I didn't believe in where we're going, I wouldn't be up here today. But I think I have the experience to help get us where we want to go.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, I run a nonprofit. I'm the director of one. And that means that you manage budgets, you manage HR, you go through personnel. It's all the day-to-day pieces that are, in a sense, very similar to a town in that regard. Not necessarily the public works department, but it means that you're building budgets. It means you're tracking budgets. Are we spending within the scope of what we planned? If not, what are the amendments we need to make to this? How do we adjust for revenue concerns? What happens when unexpected concerns come in? Have you planned for your contingency measures? This is what we have to do, and you have to do it in a way that doesn't assume you can just go get more money. The federal government seems to think they can do that, but we can't. And that's not a healthy way to approach this, and that's my background. And I think it would serve the town well. So.
Okay. My resume is, you can get it on the card, you can put Stinnette in Google, and you can probably get a few different hits on where I've been and what I've done. What I want to tell you is why. Over a 30-year career in the military, I moved 15 times. That includes, and as an aviator, every time I moved my family, I had to deploy. So I spent a couple of tours in Afghanistan, a couple of tours in Iraq, very little time at home. And I was dependent on the local neighborhood and the local community to take care of my family. And they did. And so after 30 some odd years in the military, I figure it's my time to pay that forward. And so that's my motivation. It's nothing more and it's certainly nothing less. I just want to do the right thing by those that have come before me. Thank you.
This was, I thought, a good question in the first round. Where are your favorite places to spend time in our town?
Well, of late, Valley football/soccer field has become one of my favorites because girls are playing JV soccer. It's a relief to not have to do their club soccer thing and travel all over God's creation and stay home, and even the away games are in Loudoun. I think both schools are a real asset to the community. I live in Court to St. Francis, so we do a lot of walking. We can walk to downtown, we can walk to the library. Before our walking path was closed, we could easily walk to the Tabernacle and to Fireman's Field. We did go to a couple baseball games last year, even though my girls are not real baseball fans. It was fun. It's a small town atmosphere. You get some popcorn, you get a soda, you watch baseball, they're real players. I think some of the walking trails are nice. While it's not necessarily in the town, I spent a lot of time in Franklin Park, both at the pool. My kids have used the roller skating rink, which has been really nicely redone. Not a rink, it's an outdoor.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, Chapman to Mary Trail as well. I love going out there. I'm an outdoorsy guy. So, and what the mayor didn't tell you, so I don't know if he's keeping this a secret, but if you take the Chapman to Mary Trail and go over the road on the backside of where Loudoun Lumber is, the police department, there's a whole other section over there. It's awesome. You can do a nice loop. Matter of fact, Councilman Ryan, or Mr. Fullback there, he works on the Parks and Recreation Committee, and they were looking at establishing about a 2-mile, I think it was a 2-mile loop in there. So there's a lot of good things out there. I also like getting out and walking the trails. I love being on the trails. I love sitting on a summer afternoon, coming home from work, getting out there and driving straight over to Fireman Park or Fireman Field, go get me a hot dog and watch the Cannons play. That's enjoyable to me. I also like just 21st Street, walking up and down there. Some of the places I lived in England, it was a walking town. And that's kind of what I see here. I see some of that walking town piece in that. So if I had to pick one, it's that trail because it's so nice and so secluded out there. Thank you.
All right. For myself, I actually have to give you a toss-up. Personally, I enjoy just walking up from where I live and heading down the OND Trail and whatnot. And, it's pretty. I like the shape and I like the leaves and seeing them turn colors. I love that. If you're going to ask me whether my boys are around, I'd probably have to answer Grudos. Just because with 3 little boys, ice cream is definitely going to be the high point. So we spent more time than I probably should have in there, and cleaning up more chocolate ice cream messes than I probably would care to off of a 3-year-old. But those would be the 2 answers.
So my wife calls it going Forrest Gump. I'm an avid runner. I will literally go out and run 20 miles on a Saturday and 15 miles on a Sunday. So I know where all the nooks and crannies are. I know where the trails are. More importantly, I know where the poison ivy is and isn't. I've learned that the hard way. I will typically get lost somewhere over in Round Hill and have to find a phone and have to get my wife to come out and rescue me. I range between Round Hill and Leesburg in running. And I run a lot on the trail. Actually, not on the trail, but actually off on the horse part of the trail, the WOND trail. I bet you some of you probably didn't know that, but there's a trail that runs adjacent to that. So my thing is running. I mean, I run virtually 7 days a week, and it doesn't matter what the weather is or the temperature is, and I just love the local area.
What is your position on building development, infill development, and/or annexations?
I think the primary growth over the next 5 to 10 years should be and probably will be infill, redevelopment of older buildings, and in some cases some of the older buildings aren't that historic. They should just be taken down. I think there will be some growth along Main Street. Tip and his staff have done a great job coming up with a good comprehensive plan. Whatever development happens, I've stated in all my PR material that I would not listen to whether it's an annexation or a redevelopment or an expanded development of existing properties or infill if the person in front of us is not offering real improvement to the traffic situation. I quite frankly am not sure I would have any further interest in listening to the proposal.
So I'm also very much slow. I don't have a problem with growth, but I want slow, sustained growth. I want smart growth. So to me, infill development would be the place to go. However, you've got to look at and figure out what is the person who's looking to occupy that, what are they actually looking at? How can they, exactly what you were talking about, how can they contribute back to the town? You're going to have some development. You've got to have smart development. You can't go in there and put 6, 7-story buildings up there. It's got to fit into the mold of what we're talking about. With regards to annexation, there's a lot of talk about annexation, and I think if you read the Blue Ridge Leader, I had a comment in there as well about that. Annexation, people talk about, you can annex your way out of taxes and stuff like this and help get rid of that development or that debt. But keep in mind, every time you do something with annex, you're drawing onto our utilities, you're drawing onto our water. So there's a cost in there. So that return on investment, you really got to look at hard to figure out where it is. I personally would like to see the buildings that we have in town built up and used and to the fullest extent. Thank you.
All right, that's a lot to put in a minute. So I'll give you the high points, and then come find me later and we'll talk for an hour. I guess the best answer to this is that we, as a town, must carefully face a choice of how we want to pay for the costs we have. Which is why you're not going to see me say, I'll never annex and I'll never authorize development. I won't go there. But I also don't want to go there. We might need to, but if we do, that has to be done in a careful, considered way that very strategically preserves the character of our town, that improves our traffic issues, that assists our community, because we have to be careful not to add on additional costs in that sort of approach. That's a very dangerous game we play. But we are, $50-some million in debt, and we have utility bills on the rise. So we have to be careful about where we're going forward, but we can't be pinned into inability to act.
So I think you're smarter than that question. We always like to take that question and make it a binary kind of thing. Annexed or not annexed. In actuality, what you've told us through the course of 2 years of discussion on this topic in our comprehensive plan is you've told us that it ought to be a conditions-based discussion, okay? And so it's not a binary one or the other. It's what are the conditions that we would begin this discussion, okay? What in terms of, is our water infrastructure capable of adding more development onto it? How about our road infrastructure? How about our services infrastructure? So what we ought to be talking about as a community is what are those conditions that are necessary to have an informed discussion on a topic that, to my way of thinking, is more than binary to annex or not to annex. Thank you.
How would you address the needs of the lower income housing, assisted living, mental health, addiction housing, the needs of those less fortunate in our community?
That's a very good question. I think a lot of that has to be done at the county level, state level, federal level. Of course, we can do some at the local level. The biggest part of that I would like to see us try to tackle is whether you call it affordable housing or whether you call it workforce housing. I think that would be very important. I know as a manager down in Costco in Leesburg, probably about 20% of our workers live in the county. I know, and I've met a lot of the business people in Purcellville, and when I was out trying to get signatures to get on the ballot, I asked them if they were residents. Most of them weren't. I asked them if their employees were residents. Most of them weren't. I know a lot of our town employees travel as far as West Virginia and Winchester, so I think affordable housing is a real area we can try to tackle. And I know the mayor's mentioned that we have some assets that we could utilize. I know there's a couple buildings that I've seen that I believe the town owns that might be ripe for affordable or workforce housing.
So interestingly enough, when I was out trying to get signatures for my petition, as I was talking to elderly folks, what they were telling me is, and I'm getting here myself, so I kind of really listened hard to this, is there's not a lot of opportunity out there for the elderly, for the younger kids and all that stuff. But the elderly in particular were telling us we kind of like something where we can get together. There's pockets of it within our community. So try to figure out, does that mean we lower some taxes for them? I don't know what that answer is at this point. But when you start talking about workforce, I come from a family where my dad, if he made $19,000 a year, that was way big money. So I grew up on that. I understand it's not easy for people, especially young people trying to raise a family, trying to make all these ends meet. So we have to look at and see, are there opportunities to give them affordable housing or to at least help them with affordable housing? I believe not giving, I believe in helping people get there and help them get to where they need to be. Everybody in our town deserves some measure of respect. We've got to figure out what that nice blend is and get out there and help them get there, as successful as we are. Thank you.
This question, well, I guess there's two answers to it. I keep using this, I know. But I think the first one is that there is a capacity within the town that is spoken to by the generosity of the residents of Purcellville. I've volunteered at Tree of Life. I think some of you guys have as well. And there is a place where you can, as a private citizen, assist. There's also a place for thoughtful, careful policies addressing these sorts of problems. That might mean that we sit down and look at how we do our, if we're looking at a new development, what sort of housing is going in there? What's the cost rate going to be for that? And that doesn't have to be high-density housing. There are other options than that, and I don't necessarily think that would fit well with the character of the town. But there are ways to approach it both from a policy perspective in a planned-oriented way, but also a way of a private citizen engagement as well. And I think both approaches are needed.
Okay, so we recently put out a survey to all the businesses in the local area, and they all kind of came back and told us what their biggest challenges were. And one of the biggest challenges was getting the skilled employment, employees, going out and getting employees. I will tell you the issue of affordable housing is not optional. By Commonwealth law, our comprehensive plan must address the issue of affordable housing within our municipality. And to be completely honest with you, I'd like to tell you that your planning commission figured that all out and the answer is going to be in the upcoming comprehensive plan. But we didn't. And so what we've actually done is said this is kind of an issue that we're going to have to get our hands around and get a bunch of smart people together and kind of come up with a plan for dealing with this. But if you want to look at it from a purely selfish perspective, how do we sustain our community? It's through our small businesses, and they are very dependent on employees that live in affordable housing. Thank you.
Okay, looking at the time, we have time for 2 more questions, and then we'll go to the closing statement. So, first one would be, if elected, what 3 steps would you take to put our town on a firmer financial footing?
A couple things. I think the organizational or operational, however you want to determine, assessment that the RFPs have gone out for and have come back is perfect timing for that. We will have some new council members. We may or may not have a new mayor. We have a brand new town manager. And I think the assessment will hopefully go a long ways to make sure we're running efficiently as possible. 64% of the total town budget goes to personnel costs. So that's an easy, not an easy way, it's the quickest way to look at the biggest part of the budget. I know the mayor's talked about reducing debt, and that's fine and good. That impacted the budget overall by about 3 or 4%, I believe. You said 3 steps. I think the second step, as we've already talked about, is look at the water and sewer rates and see what we can do to at least lower the expected increases. And I still go back to traffic each and every time. And I think the 287 interchange is about ready to crack, and it seems like there's plenty of right-of-way there that we can improve.
Okay, I believe step 1 would be to try to pay as quick as we can, or as efficiently as we can, start paying off water plant debt. That's something that's going to be there for a while. You get some services out of it, you get some value out of it, but also you have to pay for that. So I would look to try to do that. The second thing I would like to do is, the mayor touched on it, the Aberdeen property. That is, I'm not into going in there and cutting out timber and things like that, but to look how we could monetize that. How could we get some return on investment? A young lady came to the town council a couple months ago and talked about getting horse trails and things like that. If you could get that going up there, can you imagine the tourism that we could get in there? Now you have easement rights and some right-of-way pieces to address, so that's got to be addressed out there as well. And then monetary and other assets within the town. We've got buildings sitting out here. There's a couple buildings that we're not really using. Could we use it for like tourist information centers or things like that? How about like an IT center or some kind of learning center and things like that? Minimal costs, but at least you're getting something back out of it. But that's it. Thank you.
All right. When it comes to addressing the financial concerns, I think that Steve touched on this, and I think he's right. The first thing we probably need to look at, and I'm probably going to keep ringing this bell as long as I'm around here, is that we need to get our water and sewer rates figured out, which means we need to address our water and sewer debt, which means we need to address our capacity issues. And there are a few options on the table for that. Some options are to reuse the wastewater, as the mayor mentioned earlier. Then another option might be exploring the possibility of partnerships with other local municipalities or other groups to be able to process some of their wastewater if there's an availability for market there. That could be done without additional development. I've explored this opportunity with a few associates that I know in Leesburg because they've actually done the same thing. There is a possibility. There is also possibly an expense. That would be a study. But to be fair, there are some possibilities here to help address that, to be able to pay down that debt. If we can eliminate that debt, that does wonders for our long-term planning, and as well as wonders for your rates and being a good manager of those.
I would offer that the current kind of capital plan that we as a town are using actually is financially sound. There are 3 areas you kind of need to be thinking about. You got to look at the budget, you got to look at the taxes, and you got to look at your assets. So obviously we want to become more efficient in terms of our government. We want to put less money into paying for, big government. We want to size the government so that it's, proportionate or equivalent to the size of our community. I am a believer in the Laffer curve, which basically says the more you tax something, the less you get. There is a point where you can actually tax something less and you can gain greater revenues. I'm interested in doing that with the restaurant tax. And then in terms of leveraging assets, I am interested in both the Aberdeen property from an equine perspective as well as some cutting-edge drone technology that we can put out there as well. So those are the things I think we should pay attention to. Thanks.
I believe we ended with this question earlier with the mayor. If you received $1 million grant for use for the town, and you can spend it any way you want, what would you do with it and why?
Well, I like the first answer of giving it all back in taxes, but that's not realistic. I think, one, I would want to see some traffic improvements, because again, all of our traffic stems from the 287 bottleneck. Hurst Road is terrible. Would Hurst Road be bad if you had to wait 3 light cycles to turn on to 287 to get to 7? Probably not. So, I think the wisest use of $1 million would be traffic improvements at 287 and 7, and as I said before, the right-of-way is there, the bridge is wide enough. It wouldn't take much to get a couple left-hand turns in going north, so you can go west. So that doesn't stop because one car stopped to turn left. You could get a dedicated right-hand turn lane going east in the morning. I believe we have some Patrick Henry right-of-way that they gave back when they got some approvals. But I would focus that on traffic.
So for $1 million, okay, so here we go. If you look on my webpage, I've already spoken about this a little bit, not so much as with $1 million, but I'm a firm believer we have to reinvest some time and energy in fiscal resources into our youth and our elderly. So I talked about that on my webpage as one of my legislative agendas. I really believe this is a big thing. We have to do that. Chip was talking about a resource for some of our small businesses or business owners. We have some of that right here, so invest in those. Keep those kids, keep them going, let them learn. The elderly, lots of untapped wealth and knowledge right there. I think what I would do is, just if I had to split it in half, I would invest half there, and the other half I would invest towards that water thing. It all impacts all of us. There's a lot of other ways you could use that money. They talked about the road improvements. I think you can get, if you work savvy, you can probably get some of that funding from the county, but that comes at a cost. We're going to have to pay that back. So if I split it in half, that's what I would do. Thank you.
All right, $1 million. My favorite game to play at the table. What would you do with $1 million? My boys have crazy answers. My wife and I sound like adults because we're like, we're going to pay off the mortgage, we're going to do the other stuff. It's the practicalities of life. In this case, that means probably paying down debt. We have a lot of it, and we need to get rid of it quickly. It also means if I can control an answer to the question, I'd make sure that $1 million showed up in the utility fund, so we don't have to move it over from the general fund, because that's bad accounting. If we can't do that, then I think we're looking at probably putting some into traffic or some into maybe the exploratory aspect of finding additional water resources, because right now we're running almost at the upper limit of our actual clean water generation.
So I'm a capitalist. I take the $1 million, invest it, and make millions more. And then I take that and spend it on the community. So that's kind of my way. I always want to take, when we first get here, it was, I think we're very proud about the fact that we have a AAA rating with Standards & Poor's, AA with Moody, and I forget, maybe a single A or triple B with Fitch. And that's all fine and well, but for me, it's what do you do with that? What do you do with that rating? And I will tell you that the council did some good stuff with that, because they parlayed that rating into restructuring our debt, which was able to kind of move that balloon payment, get rid of that balloon payment and give us 10 years of headroom to kind of go do some stuff. So we got 10 years of headroom. I take the $1 million, invest it in the markets, make millions more, then start paying down my debt, then start getting everything else I want. Think big. We can. We can be small and think big. Thank you.
Okay, well in the 10 minutes we have remaining, we're going to go to closing statements. I think we said 2 minutes. If we give them 2:30, that'll use the full 10. So let's do that.